Well, hello, everybody. Hey, Tara.
Hey, Marilyn.
Listen, everybody, welcome to our Guru Talk. My name is Marilyn Johnson. I'm with MH Johnson and Associates and Tara,
Tara Winston with Interact Consulting and Interactions.
and we are the Solo CEOs. Thank you today for coming out. We really do appreciate you showing up because we have a really good show today. Today, we are going to be talking about getting out of your own way and getting shit done.
Hello.
One thing you all have, I'm sorry, Tara, for interrupting, but I
Hmm.
got to just say, one thing that you all have is the opportunity to hear from executive coaches. Tara is one. Talk about how they can help clients stop sabotaging their business. Tara, what do you got to say about that?
I just had the amen on the get shit done side.
Yeah,
Sorry, mom. Our moms are watching. Sorry. But the honest answer is like that. That's one of the biggest conversations that people have outside of like, how much do you charge and how I start my business? When we
right.
talk to each other, so much of it is about like, I am stuck and I could use some help. What do you do? So we thought having executive coaches who deal with this all the time with their clients might be a good way, for everybody to share the knowledge.
It is. And I can't say how important it is. Now, let me tell you, Tara is so transparent that she actually agreed to have her coach, David Darst, talk to her on this guru talk because what they're going to do is just share insights about things that they know personally because they're both business owners, but also Tara's willing to be a little bit transparent, way more than me, and share some of the stuff that she talks about with her coach. Now, I know everybody isn't as lucky as I am to have a friend and a business partner who is an executive coach. Sometimes that's just who she is to me. But for you all, we want you to find answers to some of the questions, and feel free, put them in the chat. Please make sure to put them in the chat because as Tara and David talk about certain things, they'll also answer some of your questions. So again, please put them in the chat. Also, one other thing I wanted to remind you, if you have not registered for this talk, please do so because as our gift to you, you will receive an action plan if you have registered. So if you're looking at me, you've already registered, you got it taken care of. If you haven't registered, please do so because we want to make sure that we're sharing that information with you. One thing I want to make sure that you understand is the best talent. Tara, best talent. David, best talent. Between the two of them, they have been coaching executives for over 25 years. And all they've seen is just positive results. But it's the hard work that counts. Terry, let's talk about a little bit some of the things that you want to just share before we bring David on.
Well, so like there's a couple things, right? So if you've never had a coach, please know that the coaching relationship is highly confidential. And so I've given David permission to talk about my stuff. Only for this call, David. Don't get it twisted now.
Right.
But because we wanted you to know the process, and so much of it is about looking at yourself and getting real. And so you're going to follow this conversation. If you thought you're going to get the 7 tips to organize your desk, you're in the wrong spot because
Mm-mm.
you already know how to do that. Coaching is about dealing with the stuff that you're stuck, things that are really hard. Because everything easy you've already fixed, right? And so as we go through this, there are literally no dumb questions when it comes to coaching. So whatever you want to put in the chat is totally fine. We may not have time to get to everything, but I think you're going to be surprised or hopefully pleasantly surprised that a lot of the things that you're dealing with, other people never say out loud, but they're dealing with it too.
It's always the question that you always say, is it just me? And you never say it. This time you have an opportunity to talk about the is it just me question with your coach. Because what we want to make sure is that everybody who's watching this is able to, once again, get out of their own way. Because folks, as solopreneurs, we got to have a lot of shit that we have to get done. And sometimes we have to do it ourselves. So without further ado, I would love to bring David into the room.
Hi, David.
Hey, David, how are you?
and my microphone is muted. My favorite thing to do whenever I'm on a Zoom mute, whatever call.
Mhm.
Well, I want to just take a second to introduce David. His name is David Darst. He is with Team Darst. He is the second half of a dynamic duo. He's been working for 17 years coaching executives, and one of those executives is our own Tara. So, with that said, I want to bounce out of the room for a second and let Tara and David get started. But please, everybody, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And also, like and share our page. We want to share this information with everybody who needs that knowledge. So, thank you. I'll see you all a little later.
All right, David. So I don't know if Marilyn actually did you any favors, right? Because she was like, one of the executive you coach is Tara. So if y'all think I'm terrible, then that is the worst advertisement, David. So David, you better fix me fast because I'm a walking billboard for you.
I can't think of a better billboard to have.
All right, so I want to start just in general to think about, you and I both coach executives in the business world, people in entertainment, as well as solopreneurs and broader entrepreneurs, right? When you think about your solopreneur clients, what types of challenges do people tend to show up with?
Well, the common challenges are overworked, right? Not enough hands for the task at hand. But a big one lately is so the dream that they started with, it's time to shift it.
Yeah.
And or the song goes, you've lost that love and feeling. Right? The vision doesn't have any juice anymore, and it's just become drudgery.
Oh my God. I see that all the time, right? Is people get lost in the they used to convince people to believe in their business before. They now have done the hoodoo voodoo on themselves, and they don't give themselves permission to say, this is not what I need anymore. Right? This doesn't fit me. And they kind of get lost in it. And in fact, I found myself in that position. That's something that you and I worked on a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you, you gave me some of the best insights at that time. Because I was at a point where it just like the work was fine, but I wasn't feeling it. And I kept feeling like I was getting stuck. And I was just so frustrated because I couldn't find my way through. And, this insight that you gave me that was so powerful, and I use it with my clients now, is rather than be so caught, like stuck by the fact that I was feeling this way, to recognize that this was myself, my body, my mind telling me this is time to shift. It's time to look for something different. You're not happy, and that's okay. How do you get there? And now that has been a huge driver for me. So whenever I get that same feeling, I know that that's something telling me something doesn't feel right. And I start to make adjustments in the business, either to make the work juicier, to, maybe I need more time to rest or whatever it is. Right. And so I love the fact, for entrepreneurs that are scared that losing that loving feeling means like I'm a failure or that's the end of something. Really, it actually would be a space to grow from.
Right. Well, and as you say that, another piece of, so a lot of people hire a coach or they come to coaching only when it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So one of the things I've admired about you is your constant willingness to look at yourself. Mm. And I won't get into the specifics of it, but sometimes you show up and everything's going great. And we work on your prescription for success, because we've all got medicine cabinets. When we start to get a headache or something, we can go to the medicine cabinet. So as a solopreneur, as a self-employed business owner, when things are going good, what are you doing well that takes care of yourself? So when you have that dip, you can go to the medicine cabinet. Oh, I've stopped working out. I've stopped reading fun books in my spare time to exercise that part of my brain. Oh, maybe 20 minutes of that might be useful, right? So those are some of the other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait until the last minute is a common challenge.
Yeah, wait too long to be coaching. Mm-hmm.
Like the ship's not going down, it's underwater.
Right? People always show up after I tell people, like, you're making decisions like it's the last lifeboat off the Titanic. That's never the space, right? So if you get before then, you have way more options and you're less desperate about your choices. Okay, but you hit something that really sparked kind of what I see in a lot of my solopreneurs, and honestly, people with high-powered jobs. So whether it's solopreneurship or not, we tend to forget that we are one packaged human, right? Work, home, like all the things work together. And so if you have a set of values that you honor, your body, your mind, you crave those values and you will try to get it in any kind of way. So if you don't get enough rest or control, you will start to look for those things in other areas of your life, and it will show up in the darndest, most annoying places, right? So like me having the need to, I was working out and in the good times, and I'm not doing it anymore. Like, it's not just about what habits are you not bringing in, or that lovely self-care industry everyone talks about. Like, you need self-care. The honest answer is, like, that's literally part of the algorithm that makes you go.
Right.
And so if you don't have that thing, I had one client that had a huge value around nature, and if she didn't get some time in nature, she started to be really cranky. Like, work was a drudgery. Like, there were all these different pieces, and we were able to bring that back to there was a single value that had been left behind. And so truly, the thing that shifted her, she will sit outside in the grass under a tree with the shoes off. Literally, that's it. Or I had someone that just getting back into their swim care routine gave them what they needed, right? And so, like, feeling like we're disconnected entities,
right,
is a huge challenge for particularly solopreneurs, because we can absorb all this entrepreneur porn about, like, hustle. This is what everyone else is doing, right? And it's so easy to lose the things that help your engine go.
Yeah.
Well,
and as you say that, you spark, you call it entrepreneur porn. But one of the things I work with a lot of folks on is developing their plan and their way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've heard me say most of the books out there, self-help or otherwise, are written in a descriptive manner in which they describe what that person did to get ahead. Now, when you're reading a descriptive piece of work, it's your job to get inspired by it and then go out and what are the parts of it that you might bring in, but what does it inspire in you, and what would your way of doing it be?
Mm-hmm.
How most people read it, and even the porn part, is prescriptive.
Yes.
If I do it this way, I will da 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 da. Well, I've got a fellow that's putting on paint, and when it comes to putting on paint, prescriptive works pretty well. When it comes to an intricate human being, there's a lot of variety.
Well, not to mention, there's a lot of variety, and for entrepreneurs, we left jobs because we didn't like how things work. And then we so often go back and recreate those exact same circumstances in the companies that we create, usually because we're afraid that that's the only way you can be successful. That's all I've ever seen. It was descriptive rather than taking the pieces that work. And then, as for me, it's a translation, right? There are factors that are in place. How do I transcribe those factors based on my language? What works for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people get so lost in that. Apparently that's the doorbell, because this is live. So I think there's a package out for me.
Well, tell us a poem about a doorbell. Since you're so good at poetry.
Man, like, That was the exact wrong time to put that fact up because I got nothing for it. But okay, so I do want to work with a doorbell. So
Okay.
this is one of those crazy coach things, right? So coaches, what we do is we deal with whatever comes up, right? You walk into one of our coaching sessions and you can say like, I don't know what to talk about, but a bird is chirping, and we can just follow where it leads, because whatever you like, you will always get what you need out of a coaching session. We always get there. We can start way over here and then land where you need. So I'm going to start with the doorbell, right? Like the doorbell means there's something new coming. Like what's new? What's new that's coming in this current environment that you want your clients to be thinking about, right? There's so much gloom and doom, like, oh, it's a pandemic, like there's forest fires in California, murder hornets, right? So we're so caught on what's there. What's new that you want your coaches to be your coachees to be leaning into?
Yeah. Well, here's a new thing. So you know me and words and language, and if my wife is listening to this, she's going to go, oh, there he goes again. So one of the hot buzzwords is pivot, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't all that good at it, similar to that fun fact about the entertainment industry. Most of my time was behind the camera because out front wasn't that all that good. But in basketball, your pivot foot means you stay in one place. So in this COVID time, if you talk about pivoting, oftentimes you are locking yourself into a position that actually may not be useful anymore.
Ooh.
So what are the shifts to what's trying to happen? How do you shift into what's wanting to happen rather than pivoting where you are? Because it might be time to let go totally and just step into something totally new.
Okay, so but let's play with that, because I think there are a lot of people out there that like you said, what I've been doing maybe doesn't feel like it's right, but I can't abandon, or I feel like I can't abandon everything, right? So so I've been listening to this idea of pivot. I like shift. Where do I start with that though?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of getting back in touch with what's your vision? What's the outcome you're wanting to create? By the way, that's another shift. Rather than looking at the problem and what's not working, what's the outcome I want to create? And then, as you know, a lot of what we work on is not what do you need to do, but who do you need to be? Yes. So in order to create that outcome, who do I need to be?
All right. So for everybody listening, I want to reiterate two things that David just said, right? So the first one is, what is the outcome that I want? So if you feel stuck someplace, it is so natural to just start with okay, what steps to get me out of this? Or what research of someone else's descriptive way of getting out of this, right? So what is the outcome that I want to create? So focus on the vision at the end. Is it more relaxation? Is it more money? Don't judge it. And then the second piece was so who do I need to be in order to live that outcome? David, the idea of being is a really big one that I bring with my clients too. Now, just so you know, just because I bring with my clients, David still like I still need him to remind me to get into my being and to talk about it. The difference between doing and being, like doing is I will make a to-do list to get this done, right? It's all the work. Being is about what type of person does these things, right? What traits do you embody? What values do you honor? And the idea that you can be in a way that then drives all the extra doing. We tend to do it wrong. We tend to work ourselves to death trying to pantomime what we think is the answer to get to this thing.
Well, here's a quick one, right? Speaking of pantomime, doing is opening the door, right?
Yes.
Take one. What do you want? Welcome. Come on in. Two totally different ways of being when it comes to opening your door to someone or something.
Well, and one of the questions we talked to the Solo CEO team and to see if there were any questions that they would like answered, and one came up about the imposter syndrome. And one of the big things about the imposter syndrome is the fact that you have not stepped into the being of who you are, right? You're so busy doing, but like you don't identify that you are in fact this strong entrepreneur or solopreneur, that you are this executive. Like you don't believe in the being part yet. And it doesn't matter, like you're doing all the work, you're doing the reports, you're presenting. The fact that you don't feel it is a being problem, not a doing problem. And you can't do yourself into being.
Right. And the other thing, a lot of the reasons that people hire you is because of your unique qualities. Mm-hmm. Imposter syndrome tends to be people trying to find same qualities. Again, you talked about the box. Let's get out of the box and then let's do my best to create the exact same box that, by the way, I don't belong here because I don't fit in it anyway.
I ran from it.
Right. So it's just like, but there's,
Yeah. All right. So a question that just came through was like, we're doing all this good talking, but what if I don't know what I want? Like, what if I don't know what I want to do? Like, I just know what I don't want to do.
Okay.
Like, all right. So where would you start for somebody like that?
So if you know what you don't want, right? So you know what's behind you. Mm-hmm. When I was moving around earlier, very reason for that is once you've got that vision, it's useful to move a little bit. Mm. And so maybe in finding your vision, one of the things to do would be like, get outrageous. Write down 10 possible outcomes. 10 fantastic futures for yourself.
Ooh, that's a t-shirt. 10 fantastic futures.
Right? Mm-hmm. And if 10's not enough, go for 20. With no attachment to making it happen. And then maybe pick a couple and write a story about it. Or what's a song that lines up with one of those possible futures? Or maybe there's a movie that inspired you. What was it about the movie? You know where we're getting with this. Yeah. When we start looking at movies and stuff, we're actually going to look at what are values of yours that maybe are wanting to be honored again. Because that's the other thing about solopreneurs. We start out and we'll have certain values of ours. I'm living a valued, honored life. But we've got 3 of them that are holding us hostage. Right? And nobody works well in a hostage situation. So once any 1 or 2 things becomes the be all and end all, you've kind of got a hostage crisis. So when you talk about executive coaches, one of the things we hear is some of the loops you get stuck in. Mm-hmm. Right? And my job is just to offer what I think might be going on, and then for you to look in a slightly different way. And sometimes I'll throw something out and you go, no, it's not that, it's this, right? New coaches will go, oh man, I asked the wrong thing. You and I know we asked the perfect thing because you came up with something that was even better than what the coach was going for in the first place. Right?
Yeah. The idea of kind of being held hostage by values, they think something that like connected to your values is people are also held hostage by their shoulds. Right. And so limiting beliefs is what you may see it in some types of literature. But we live with this list of invisible rules that somebody came up with that aren't necessarily true. Right. Yeah. If you want to do sales, you should do cold calls. Yep. Right. If you want to have work-life balance, you should cook dinner for your family on the weekends for it. There's this list of shoulds that govern us. And if we go back and start to unravel where these shoulds come from, like we get them from the broader environment, we get them when we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. Like sometimes we just manifest them in our heads because we're looking at someone else's success and we're trying to reverse engineer it without knowing their inside story.
Yep.
But the shoulds are brutal. And if you want to free yourself, right? Number one, don't be held hostage by a few values. And then number two, examine your shoulds and throw away the ones that don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that, as you bring that up, just the idea of a to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something we've worked on. I've worked with a lot of people on. If something lives on your to-do list very long, it might be a should. So I have a to-do list, but I also have a to-should list. And there are a lot of things that move to the to-should list.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the funny thing about it being on a should list is every once in a while, something that was on the to-do list, once it moves to the should list, it takes the power away from it. And I find myself doing it in a fun way, not in a hunkered down way, right?
Yeah.
I should work out, right? And that lived on the to should list. And all of a sudden, I'm walking every morning. And it's not working out, but it is creating a sense of vitality, which is what working out's supposed to bring anyway.
Okay, so that's a perfect example, right? You didn't start from, I want to work out. That is not an outcome, right? That's a to-do. That's a do, right? So instead, like if you're someone who for a long time has had, I want to work out on your list of to-dos and it's not working out, then the outcome is I want to feel more vitality. The outcome is I want to be in nature. The outcome is I want to be able to touch my damn toes, right? There's an outcome, and then that allows you to figure out a happier way to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
And that goes back to the vision thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's the what? What's the carrot, so to speak, that's dangling in front of you that's going to move you forward? Marilyn talked about having you as her partner. I've got a brilliant partner, Cynthia Lloyd-Darst, who's one of the pioneers in coaching. And we don't necessarily coach each other, but we do have coaching conversations. From time to time, people think, oh my gosh, your life must be like deep conversation. No, we zone out and take breaks, and we don't just have deep conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But there are moments where that starts to drive. And this vitality thing, like when our relationship, I know one of the things we want to get to is relationships. When our relationship starts feeling tight, it's usually because a value or a vision of one of ours starts to feel threatened. And then when the vision starts to feel threatened, we'll start interacting with our partner like they're the threatener. And when we get back in touch, when one of us decides to get back in touch with the vision and share that with the other, that we can usually align around. Now, we don't always agree on the steps towards it, because certain things we'll do different. Like the way she's doing vitality these days, she's got this dance thing that she does. And I ain't doing it. Right? But I've got other things that I'm doing to create vitality in me.
Yeah. So before we get to relationships, I definitely want to get to that next. There is a question that popped up. Let's see, I'll put it on the screen. So I can do a lot of things, but I only want to do certain things. Like, so how do I handle creating a new path that's not exactly what I'm known for? Ooh, wait a minute. David, how many shoulds are in that one sentence?
Well, there's a lot, but I mean, I know you were going to be the example, but when I first came to coaching, I had no executive as clients. I wasn't known as an executive coach. So I just started saying I was an executive coach. Because here's what makes an executive coach. You coach executives. Right? Basically, there's a human being sitting across from you. And my job is to have you look in a way that you wouldn't necessarily look. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is to not have as much expertise. So even though we have similar, I try to set any expertise aside that I have when I'm working with you. Mm-hmm. That's not the first place to go. There are times when I weave it in, but mostly I'm sitting beside asking you the questions that you're not asking yourself. Right? Framing things like the doorbell in a way that you wouldn't necessarily frame it because you're smart. You can do that on your own. So my job is to have you look different.
Well, and when I think about that question, like, so David's speaking to like doing the things that you want to do and doing it in your way. You don't actually have to label it, right? So David is being an executive coach without ever putting the words on it, right? So if you're someone that like I have a reputation for a lot of things, and at this point now, there's one part of my work that I like. This is back to David's, idea of people needing to shift. People are incredibly busy in their lives. They don't have time to sit around and think about you in depth, right? So when you tell people who you are and you show people who they are, they ultimately will leave walking away with that. So if you have people that know you to be a great, David is a carpenter, right? Like, he was a carpenter. I don't know him as a carpenter. I know him as my coach, right? But if he had a reputation as a carpenter and he walked around saying like, I know I'm a carpenter, but actually I'm really a coach, eventually people will get it, right? Usually when someone says, I am known for this thing and I don't know how to pivot from what I'm known for, what's deeper is this fear that they're not good enough in the new area. Oftentimes we feel very safe in what we've built a reputation in. And that becomes really rough because a lot of times there are many of us that have expertise in things that we don't love. Yeah. Because we keep getting accolades and recognized for the things that, that we're good at, it feels risky to move to the things we love because we don't have that same guarantee of getting those accolades. But don't fear, trust. If this is what you want to do, and you like, eventually you tell people, they're going to believe you because again, they don't have all day to just worry about your life. They will start to process that. So, work with what is the fear that I'm not going to either be able to shift into this new space or that people won't believe me. Deal with that. The rest is going to be fun.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to talk about relationships because that is one of David's specialties. And when we say relationships, we're not just talking about romantic relationships, although it can be. Really, anytime you've got more than one person interacting, there can be relationship challenges. So, David, one of the biggest ones that pops up, well, actually there's two. Let's deal with the first one, which is business relationships. Yeah. So, as a solopreneur, I can't do everything by myself. So I usually either have a business partner like Marilyn and I do, or I've got vendors or customers. When there is a damaged relationship, what types of things should I be trying to do to get it back on track?
Well, the metaphor that you and I used a lot is relationships are like a highway, and both of us are driving our cars. And oftentimes, if it's not going well, I'll want to jump over and drive the other person's car. Again, it's back to that being thing. On this highway and we're moving down, what can I do in my car that might move us forward?
Okay, but you're a crazy driver. You caused all the problems.
What can you do to stay out of the way of that crazy driver as opposed to getting road rage and possibly in Los Angeles getting yourself shot because you start chasing somebody down?
David's in California, y'all. That sounds like a story.
Right.
No. All right. So if I look at my role in this, in like how I contributed to whatever challenges we are and how to fix that, sometimes I admit I have challenges. That doesn't mean that just because I fix all my stuff, the other person by themselves is going to enter into a relationship. Like, what can we do about that? Right? Is it just only about me?
It's not about you, but there's so much embedded in this one question. And with COVID, all right, it has dumped a lot of people over what we call an edge. So this is where you are, and this is where you're going, right? Or this is where you are, and this is what you want. In between those two things is an edge. And mostly what we're working with as coaches is edge behavior. And if what I want, if it feels like you're the obstacle, one, I've lost track of what I want. And I start either getting defensive or blaming, which puts you on the defensive if you weren't before. And now we no longer have a partnership. Okay.
Yeah.
Other shifts. So I've worked with executives inside organizations, and some of the conversations I have isn't as much with the coachee, it's with the person that hired me. So if this is the change you're wanting, I need you to work really hard to see when just the glimmer of that change is happening. And when it happens, I need you to acknowledge the crap out of it.
Ooh, amen to that. Okay. Like, I need y'all to understand this. And it works both ways. If you are working on something that you are trying to shift on, you actually need people to notice the change. It's almost like if you were dieting and the scale never moved, it's hard to keep up that behavior. At the same time, people are busy. They're not thinking about you all the time. And so they don't always notice the little pieces, right? So oftentimes, I know when I'm working with my clients, it's with the person that hired the coach that may say, look, you need to notice the crap out of whenever someone makes a change. But I also, in part of the work that I do with my coachees, is how do you create more visible instances of your change, right? There are things that you can do, like you can get better and you can show people you are better, right? So, and that goes with the rebuilding relationships with customers, maybe with some vendors you have, however, whatever change you're working on. Like, it's not only about the internal change. You actually may have to show to other people that change, that shift has happened, for them to see it, acknowledge it, and for you to get the full value out of your change. It's particularly when relationships with people, because people have long memories about how you used to be with them. And so you're operating around against the used to as well as today.
Well, and it's also roles. If you have occupied that role before, you're going to expect the person to occupy it or do it the same way that you did it. And so, I'm not talking about being all Pollyanna. I mean, there's still certain processes in an organization, in your work, that needs to be followed in a certain way. Like, you need to get your tax forms filed, right? Speaking of which, not the thing to wait till the end of the day to do, right? Just keep putting it off, just keep putting it off, just keep putting it off. Some of those things on your to-do list, it might be useful to pick a time of day when you've got some life in you, but maybe time box it.
Oh yeah. Oh, we can go deep on the productivity around following your energy. But you said something. I know, like, as you have questions, please put your questions into the chat, and we'll answer them when we get to Q&A. But you mentioned roles, and I think roles are something that's super important. That is probably sounds a little bit mystical to anyone before they get a coach. We each occupy a number of roles, in with the people in our lives, right? Like, I could be a mother, I could be a partner, I could be someone's boss, I could be someone's child, right? So we all have a number of roles to people outside of us, but we also have a ton of roles on the inside.
Yeah.
And usually when we have trouble going into the being of something, is because we are occupying a role that no longer serves that space, right? Yep. And so usually for solopreneurs who come out of working for somebody else, you may have the role of worker and not boss, right? And something that Marilyn and I talk about all the time, and I'm telling Marilyn's business now, is it took us a minute to realize that we weren't occupying a CEO space. So when meeting with clients, sometimes you are in service mode, like you have your role is in service, when in fact your role needs to be CEO to CEO, right?
Mhm.
So being aware of what role you are showing up in the various work becomes really, really important.
Well, now we build on the being piece.
Yeah.
So let's do a quick role. So there's the outer role, which is the executive function.
Well, hold
You
on for a
just
minute for that. Like we're going to bring Marilyn into the conversation, and
okay.
let David like go through our roles. All right.
Hey.
All right. So David, you were saying very, very quickly, because I want to make sure we get some Q&A time in.
So outer role, you just named it, CEO. Two CEOs come together. But you've worked with a lot of CEOs. There are different types of CEOs. Elon Musk, one of the examples of the entrepreneur porn. Visionary. He's a visionary CEO. Other CEOs are a little more, actually closer to COO, right? Not as much vision, but more like hands-on practical. Really good CEOs know what type they are, and they surround themselves with the vision or with the person that gets stuff done. So as a solopreneur, one of the things that you're often tasked with is you think you have to wear all those hats. But just because you're a solopreneur doesn't mean that you can't start establishing a team of people around you, right? Oftentimes that's family. Oftentimes that's friends. But what's your support system? So that's the external roles people are going to occupy. But this, I got to give a shout out to my wife's book, Meet Your Inside Team. There's your internal support system. And oftentimes that internal support system shows up first in the ones that limit you. Because the limiters tend to talk louder than your internal champions.
Ooh, amen to that. If y'all got a whole nother hour, we can get into that for real.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Marilyn, you got some questions for us?
listen, I was busy writing down notes and everything, but I have a lot of questions. But let's just start out with, as a solopreneur, sometimes we lose our motivation, especially right now where you're trying to change probably how you're contacting your customers or getting new business. How do you get back in the game? What would you recommend people do to get back in the game after losing that motivation?
David, go ahead, and I'll follow, or you want me to take it?
Well, motivation and passion tend to be two things. And it's an excellent example to bring about one of my saboteurs.
Yeah.
Because a lot of you have heard the idea of a saboteur, the itty bitty SHTE committee, or the shifty committee, right? They shift you off focus, like the limiting belief system. I've got a saboteur that tells me I'm lazy. So when it's running the show, I do and do and do, and I fill my plate so full that I overwork myself and I don't take any time off. So I'm running around tired. I'm running around stressed. I'm getting short with my partner, my biggest support, and I'm just pissing them off. So it's counterintuitive. But when that saboteur starts running me, the best thing I can do is take a break, or at the very least, get some variety in my life. I also discovered with one of my coaches that I have an obsessive personality. Now, some of you solopreneurs might have one as well. And there are certain roles and tasks where it's really good to focus that obsession. But it's also good to get some diversity in there. so you can work different muscles and parts of yourself. So you're not spending too much time on any one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I say that, there's one other piece to add. Sometimes we get frozen with the one thing. And if you saw that movie City Slickers with Billy Crystal, Jack Palance said the one thing. And there are times when the one thing works. But instead of looking for the one thing, it's better to do something or a variety of somethings. And then see what starts to spark, see what starts to grow, and then put some energy over there. Right? But be careful, don't put all your eggs in that basket.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So as I talk, there's thoughts going on over there. What do you?
You don't know me, man.
Tara?
You don't know me. No, so I think a couple things, right? So my saboteur, I always ask my clients to name their saboteur because they pop up so much, you might as well greet them by name. So mine is Eveline from The Wiz, because mine is like, you're not working hard enough, right? Everyone's doing more than you. You're not productive enough, right? And so, and so whenever I'm losing motivation, first it's like, is Eveline back? Like David said, is there a falseness that is speaking to me that's actually bringing my energy? But the other piece, oftentimes with a client, have you set up your day right? Like, are you doing your juiciest work at the time when you have the most energy? Are the things that you're doing that are distracting of you? Like, oftentimes motivation is like, we tend to think of motivation like discipline, right, around dieting, right? Like, okay, I just want to eat cookies, no, there's actually more. It's more complex. The other piece, and David mentioned this, we all have so much on our plates, and there's so much overwork. We're actually not intentional about the things that fall through the cracks. Spoiler alert, things always fall through the cracks. Like, no one gets to the end of the day and was like, oh, yes, got that all done. Let me start tomorrow fresh. Literally everybody has things that don't happen. And usually because of urgency versus importance, phone calls and things are coming in, we let other people dictate what gets done versus what falls to the plate. And then you look at the things that are left and like, oh, this was of value to me. It was important to me. And it makes you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So examine, like, before you start saying, I'm not motivated, ask yourself, is this one of those things that's on a to should list? Right? Is that what's stopping you from doing it? You don't really want to do it, or you don't really want to do it that way. And you have taken someone else's description and made it your prescription. Right? Then once you're going to do all that, then let's talk about whether or not you're motivated. Because I guarantee you right now, if you feel unmotivated, there is something that you're doing that shows that you have motivation, just not for this stuff. Right? Diagnose it.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, this was the first time I'd heard of a to should list. But I mean, it's the reality is it will take some of the load off. So that I think that in and of itself is one massive golden nugget. But I don't know if you all have been out to see and meet all these different people that you say, well, what do you do for a living? And I'm going to tell you right now, I see more coaches. People say, well, I'm a coach. Well, I'm a coach. I was like, well, what are you coaching? And so then I started thinking, well, how do I know who's the right coach for me? Everybody's going to say they're a coach. And I remember back in the day, everybody would say, well, I'm a consultant. I'm a consultant. You know what they were doing? How do people evaluate the type of coach they need? Like, where do we find you outside of YouTube? Of course, the best coaches. But I mean, really, how do we know who's the right coach for us?
Well, David, I'll start and then I'll kick it to you. I literally, just before we got on this call, had an intro coaching call with a new client. And what I told her is that coaching is chemistry, right? There are a lot of people that have great credentials, that have been to coaches training, but you have to feel like you trust them. This is probably the most naked you're going to be. Coaches hear stuff that your partners don't hear, that your employees don't hear. They hold no agenda for you, but for you to get your agenda, right? And so it is incredibly vulnerable. And so if you have a coach that won't let you talk to them to get to know them, then it's really not. It's not going to work because you actually have to feel it. And then beware of false coaches. There are a lot of people pitching advice, which is great, consulting or mentoring, but that direction is from them to you, and coaching is actually really all about you. And if you don't, and your coach needs to know that.
Yeah, and there's another someone that will work with you to find out what ideas you want to make real.
Okay.
There are a lot of coaches out there that will jump at the first thing you say you want to make real. And that's often what creates that not motivated. Our first idea may point us in the direction of what we want, but it's not always what we want. Sometimes it's that saboteur that Tara was talking about that gives us a smokescreen direction, right? So I work with a lot of folks that when they show up at work, they have to look good and on top of their game. I'm the ear for them to run ideas by that they know aren't going to work. But by exploring the ones they know aren't going to work, or they don't have to make real too quickly, they actually come up with the good ideas that they do want to bring. So it's a little bit like playtime, right? Without having to look good. I'm not attached. I don't, you're not paying my livelihood does not depend on you. Right?
Yes. I always tell people, like, I don't care in the nicest of ways. I care about you and I want you to be happy, but I don't care if you quit your job. I don't care if you leave your husband. Like, I don't have any skin in this game other than for you to be happy, fulfilled, and have success the way you define it.
Yeah.
Well, it's good you say that, because I guess sometimes people have that challenge of defining it. You know how, I don't know if you've had people come to you and say, I don't know, fix me. Well, they're like, what do you do with that?
Let's start with a rough draft. So whenever you throw the word, I love that you brought defining in there because we think it has to be perfectly defined. What's your vision? What's the first draft of your vision? Right? People want to write a book and they got to get it perfect. Right? More than imposter syndrome, there's perfection syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? So let's get a first draft out there. When COVID hit, I worked for an organization that everything was delivered in person. The COO comes on and says, we need to get a minimum viable product going. And he says, it's probably going to be a royal shit show, but we got to break it to know what to fix. So within a week, we had our first ones up and running, and the first ones out, they were way far away from the shit show he described. Right? So there is something like, get it out there, break it, do a retrospective.
Well, and that actually connects to one of the earlier questions, right? Yeah. Like, what if I don't know? What if I don't know what I want to do, but I know what I don't want to do? Mm-hmm. Even in our careers, we tend to have this notion that we need to do all the research, figure out what color my parachute is, and then have the answer, the single answer that's going to make everything perfect, right? And build my entire life around this thing. And so everyone's so afraid of taking the next step because it's not like, what if I don't know? I'm sure about it. No one's sure about anything. Everything changes constantly. And what you knew yesterday is no longer true today. Like that's just the earth turns every moment. And so stop being attached to this is the way. And this is one of the things that comes up a lot for me in my coaching that David is constantly working on with me on, right? Like I want to make sure my answer is good and right. And right doesn't really have a real meaning. Right? Okay. It can be better. It can be directional. So if the next move that you make, if you know what you don't want, so you already eliminate some stuff, right? Now you, as David said, you come up with 10 fabulous futures. Pick one. Hell, pick two. Run at them. Get more data on what you like, and then continue to shift, right? Because guess what? You have more life to live, and even if one of those interims along the way isn't the perfect, fantastic one, if it feels good and you're learning, you're gonna have a great life. You're gonna make some money. You're gonna enjoy yourself a lot more than if you wasted a bunch of time waiting for the perfect thing to tap you on the shoulder.
You know what's interesting is, as we're talking about all the different ideas and suggestions you all have, I'm noticing that our audience, they're a little bit more silent than most times. But I think the reason for that is because we're talking about the whole person, and that's the one thing about solopreneurism. It's not just finances and marketing; it's everything else. And some of the things I think that's helpful for people is you share with them, like, what's some of the most surprising things you've learned just from coaching others, because I bet you're going to tap into something that people are sitting there holding on to. And then we have a question from Kate.
All right, so let's do Kate's question first. I'm looking at the time.
Yes.
Let's do Kate, and then if we have time, we'll get back to us, because I got a bunch of stuff, right? All right, so Kate's question: what are your strategies for handling negative client experience and not letting them get in your way of getting shit done? Boom, Kate, I love your question, right? Like, and this, everyone has this experience where like 100 people can compliment you, and that one person craps on you, and it kills your day. How do you recover, David, from a negative experience?
Well, I love the title of this thing. Get out of your own way and see where that little star thing is?
Stuff.
Put an IF in there. Shift. One of the muscles that we've been working with, Tara, I work with a lot of people on, is the shift muscle. And that's the ability, when you've noticed you've gone down that rabbit hole, how do you shift away from it? And it's just a shift. And sometimes it can be as easy as getting up and then looking at it again.
And Kate, what he's talking about is a muscle, right? I would love to say that you're not going to feel a little something when you have a negative client interaction, but that's not the goal. The goal isn't to never feel it, to be impermeable and bulletproof. But what we can do is speed the recovery, right? The shift is the speeding of the recovery. Like, to recognize that when I have one of these moments, that I manage it that I can manage it. Like, so if I do one of those moments, it's a little meditation, right? I have a wonderful friend that she keeps an accolades folder, like it's a yay folder, right? So whenever someone says, thank you, you changed my life, or this was a great report, she has that folder. And when she gets one of those responses, then she goes in and she reads some of the nice things that people said about her. Right? So figure out kind of what is your recovery mode, and you'll find that the shift between that moment where you feel some kind of way to recovery can actually get shorter and shorter.
And this is the place I do want to plug my wife's book, Meet Your Inside Team. Because if that 1% is what you're focusing on, it's probably because you've been hijacked by an inside team that starts screaming the loudest and wants you to put all your focus there. And that one player hijacks and push the other 99% to the side. So it's a quick, fun read. And I think it'll open up some stuff for you. A lot of it's going to feel similar. You're going to see parallels between some of the stuff that Tara and Marilyn and I have been talking about. But this is one book that's got a little bit of descriptive, a little bit of prescriptive, and a little bit of insightful. I particularly like the bullies and gangs section.
It sounds interesting.
Cynthia is great. I co-sign anything with her. Marilyn, it looks like our team is trying to give us the hook. David, I could talk to you all day.
But I want to shout out to Stuart, because something he said makes a lot of sense too, where he says when he stopped pivoting, he was no longer dizzy.
Right.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
You'll go round in circles. By the way, my inside team is the inside team, the musical.
Oh yeah, we're producing that, absolutely.
Right.
Listen, David, thank you so much for spending some time with us. A lot of great advice, a lot of good insight. Tara, of course, we got you all the time. So we kind of plug into her coaching expertise. But everybody, if at any point in time you feel the need that you need a coach, which honestly, I'm gonna tell you, you really do. As a solopreneur, for sure you need a coach at every step of the process. Please look at David Darst or Team Darst or Tara Winston, our very own Tara Winston at Interact Consulting. You'll find them, and I'm sure that whatever you need to ask them, they will be more than happy to share their information with you. With that,
and if we're not right, we can recommend you to other ones because we do believe in chemistry and abundance.
Sorry. Yeah. David, thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Tara, that was a really good conversation. And you actually shared your stuff.
Oh, Sam.
I can't believe it. I want to see it.
Whew, y'all, I had to work for that. But no, coaching is about vulnerability, and it doesn't make any sense if you can't get real. And hopefully this encourages each of you. Like if you don't have a coach that you're working with, get real with the people around you, because we can be peer coaches to each other. One of the things that pops up all the time in coaching is someone sheepishly says, "Am I crazy? Is this normal?" And I have to tell you that you are 100% unique, but you are not special. Every fear that you have, every doubt that you have about yourself, we've heard it a million times before. That means other people are dealing with it. This is bigger. This is bigger than whether or not you can do a spreadsheet. I gotta tell you, mindset is the thing that kills people's companies. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Whatever, Marilyn.
All right, madam. Listen, I want to let the people go, but before we go, please register if you have not, so you can get the action plan. If you've registered for this, it will automatically be sent to you along with a link to this video, so you can watch it at your leisure. And here's some great news. Don't tell Tara, but October the 16th is what? National Bosses Day. Look out for our next event, which will be on October 16th. We're so excited to share some more insight with you. And again, any ideas, thoughts, questions, comments, please put them in the feed. We love feedback. We want to continue to bring out content to you. So we want to make sure it's something you want to hear. With that said,
I got one more thing for you guys. I'm sorry, Marilyn.
She always has that last word.
I know. Last word. So October 16th is special day because it's National Bosses Day. It's our next virtual event. It's also the date that we had originally planned for our next Solo CEO Summit. But there's a little thing called COVID. And so as much as I love y'all, I don't love y'all to do it in a hazmat suit. And so we're postponing the SoloCEO Summit. It's still happening. It's going to happen when we all can get together and actually breathe the same air. But just know that if you haven't heard us talk about it, it's because we're looking for when the best date and time is.
It's COVID free. It's a COVID free environment, our next event.
We promise. So see you October 16th. Sign up if you haven't already registered. Get the action plan. If you have, like Marilyn said, if you have other ideas for talks that you want us to have, we'd love to hear it from you.
Like and share, you all. And I have to say thank you to our team behind the scenes. That is Krista Winston, Latoya Williamson, and Sherry Trotter. And just because I have to do this for Sherry, like and share and get in here, get in here. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.